It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Boris Johnson at a campaign rally tonight as the election race in the UK enters its final stages. The serial killer Lucy Letby is found guilty of attempting to murder a baby girl just hours after she was born.
We are heartbroken, devastated, angry and feel numb. We may never truly know why this happened.
Also tonight, Donald Trump gets his hush money sentencing postponed after the Supreme Court's ruling on immunity for former presidents. Tracking Russian gas to Europe, a Sky News investigation finds Moscow-owned tankers funded by British financiers.
This is pure business, I think. There's no politics. We did not sanction Europe for purchasing anything from us.
We want jobs. We want money. We can't be doing this every single week because he wants to lie to us.
Tear gas is used to break up protests in Kenya for a second week as calls for the president to step down grow.
These are now regular scenes in the streets of Nairobi. Riot police facing off against unarmed protesters who are challenging the state's power.
Plus, two-time Wimbledon champion Andy Murray bows out before his first singles match, but still plans a swan song. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. We are now into the final straight of this election campaign and the leaders are ramping up their efforts to appeal to voters. Tonight, at a rally being held by the Conservatives in London, they had a special guest, the former Prime Minister once toppled by his party, Boris Johnson.
We're here because we love our country. And whatever our differences, they are utterly trivial by comparison with the disaster we may face if these so-called opinion polls are right.
Well, our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, joins me now from central London, where Boris Johnson is holding court. A bit of a turn-up this then, Sam.
That's right. This is a surprise and a gamble, Anna. Look, Rishi Sunak has pulled the emergency ripcord with one full day of campaigning left to go in this election and summoned Boris Johnson, his predecessor but one, to front a rally here in central London just as so many different candidates facing disaster in this election. It's an extraordinary move by Rishi Sunak. He has made clear his views on Boris Johnson. The Prime Minister of today helped oust Boris Johnson back 2 years ago. Now he is relying on him for an election campaign boost at the 11th hour. Boris Johnson was cheered by the crowd. They loved to see him. Some 300 people whooped and applauded as he walked on stage, and he talked about himself. He talked about his 2019 election victory. He talked about his record in government, and he also talked about some of the campaign lines that we've been hearing about Keir Starmer being the choice of Vladimir Putin and taxes likely to go up. But what he didn't say was just as important. He did not lavish praise on his successor, Rishi Sunak, and he did not shake his hand after his appearance. The rally's still going on, but that gives you a flavour of what the event was like. Rishi Sunak still having a tough time. You can see from where he's been campaigning today exactly where the Tories think their fortunes lie. Let's watch my report.
It might be a bit warm, aren't they? Yeah, lovely.
The Prime Minister trying his hand at an alternative career, hoping for a rise in his fortunes. On the campaign trail in Oxfordshire, he really wants you to know that he gets it.
Let me get straight to it. I know there'll be many of you who would have supported us in the past who are a bit more hesitant about doing that this time around.
This might seem very familiar. Here he was yesterday.
I know many of you who supported us in the past have some hesitations about doing that again.
The same lines, the same backdrop, even the same jumper. This late stage of the election campaign now all about repetition.
Thank you so much.
It's not just the individual campaigns retreading the same ground. Here's Keir Starmer on a farm in Banbury yesterday.
Yeah, very.
And today, Rishi Sunak on a farm also in Banbury.
Makes a big difference. Big difference.
There is a reason that both men are ending the campaign on traditional Tory turf.
A farm shop in Oxfordshire. It doesn't get more true blue than this. The fact that Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer have both been campaigning around here tells you that both campaigns think that the polls are right and that Labour is set to make inroads in places they haven't for decades.
Banbury has been Tory for over 100 years. Now the centre of this campaign. Are the locals ready to turn?
Have you stuck to one party or another in the past?
Yes.
And which party's that?
Conservative.
And so why are you wavering this time?
Because they made rather a mess of things.
I think they've just decided that it has been Tory for 100 years, so it's a safe seat, we can do what we want, and I think that's really disrespectful to the local community.
Do you see signs of Tory desperation?
Yeah, completely. I think, Rishi Sunak stacking shelves in the local Morrisons, that smacks of desperation to me.
Is this the first time that you've seen Tory canvassers at election time?
Yeah, I've had 3, which is 3 more than I've ever had before.
And what's the biggest reason for that?
Biggest reason, because they think they might lose it round here. I don't think we'd see them otherwise.
Keir Starmer confronting a new line of attack. The Tories attempted to brand him a part-time Prime Minister after he said he'd try to finish work at 6 on Fridays to spend time with his family.
I actually can hardly believe that 48 hours before an election, the Conservative Party has got nothing possible positive to say as they go into this. They're just in this negative, desperate loop, and it is really desperate.
Packing up and shipping out. Will he be doing the same again on Friday morning? Sam Coates, Sky News, Banbury.
This is a full list of all the candidates standing in Banbury. Lucy Letby, who was last year found guilty of the murder of 7 babies, has today been found guilty of the attempted murder of a premature baby just 2 hours after she was born. The jury took just 3.5 hours to convict her. In a statement, the baby's family said this justice will not take away the extreme hurt and anger or provide an explanation. Letby has already been sentenced to spend the rest of her life in prison for what she did at the Countess of Chester Hospital, and an inquiry into what happened will begin in September. Sky's chief North of England correspondent Greg Milam has this report.
The moment Lucy Letby was led away from her home by police, the woman who is the most prolific serial child killer in modern British history.
Take a seat in there for me, Lucy.
An experienced nurse with responsibility for some of the smallest and most vulnerable, who used her position instead to murder 7 of the babies in her care. She'd already been convicted of also attempting to murder 6 others, one of them twice. Now a jury has convicted her of trying to kill yet another baby. It happened here in the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital. The jury shown this video tour to understand its layout.
This used to be Nursery 1, also coined the hot room. This is where the sickest patients were brought.
It was in this room Letby displaced the breathing tube of an extremely premature baby girl, barely 2 hours old. The jury was told she was caught virtually red-handed by consultant Ravi Jairam, walking in on her as the baby suffered a life-threatening collapse. But Letby doing nothing. The alarms that should have been sounding were silent.
Staff at the unit had to think the unthinkable, that one of their own was deliberately harming and killing babies in their care. These were the actions of a cold-blooded, calculated killer.
The child, identified as baby K, died a few days later. The prosecution didn't allege Letby's actions caused her death. The police read a statement from her family at the end of what they called a long, torturous journey.
Today, justice has been served, and a nurse who should have been caring for our daughter has been found guilty of harming her. But this justice will not take away the extreme hurt, anger and distress that we've all had to experience.
It also does not provide us with an explanation as to why these crimes have taken place. We are heartbroken, devastated, angry and feel numb. We may never truly know why this happened.
Because the motivation for Letby's actions remains unclear. Prosecutors at her original trial said she enjoyed playing God. A public inquiry into events at the Countess of Chester Hospital through 2015 and 2016 will begin to hear evidence in September. An investigation into other potential crimes continues. Lucy Letby was already sentenced to spend the rest of her life in prison. The families of the babies she attacked condemned to life sentences of their own.
And Greg joins me now from Manchester. So another conviction then, Greg, but what more is to come on this case?
Well, I mentioned that inquiry. That in September will begin hearing evidence, and the families of those babies who died, those who were attacked by Lucy Letby, will be the first to give evidence to that inquiry when those hearings get underway. It will look at what their experiences were at this hospital, the conduct of staff here, and also the wider culture in the NHS. So that's the inquiry part of this. The hospital today said its thoughts were with the family of baby Kay. They said they were sorry that what they called the awful crimes took place here, and they said things had changed significantly since Lucy Letby's days. There is also a police inquiry on two fronts. It's looking at whether there is any basis for corporate manslaughter charges. They say they are not investigating any individuals on suspicion of corporate manslaughter at the moment, but also they continue to look into Lucy Letby's career at this hospital and another one in Liverpool. They say they're reviewing the cases of 4,000 babies. Now, they say they're not investigating all of those cases, but if there is any cause for concern, then they will follow those cases up. And they say all of those families have been informed. So those continue, those investigations continue. More immediately, Lucy Letby will be sentenced on Friday for attacking a baby who was described in court as being the epitome of fragility. We know, though, she will spend the rest of her life in prison.
Greg, life is there in Manchester. Thank you. Sentencing in Donald Trump's hush money case has been delayed to September. His lawyers are challenging the conviction after a Supreme Court ruling yesterday which granted immunity to some actions by former presidents. In May, a New York jury found Mr. Trump guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records. Well, let's get more. Our US correspondent James Matthews joins us now from Washington. So what then are the implications for both the court cases facing Donald Trump and indeed, James, the election in November?
Hi, Anna. Yes, they are, of course, wrapped up together. In terms of Donald Trump, it was after the Supreme Court ruling yesterday that decreed a president making decisions in office could enjoy immunity from criminal conviction for decisions made on an official basis, but not on an unofficial basis. His lawyers have gone to the New York court and said, well, the case that convicted him, evidence in that case, some of that was presented to the jury, and it related to tweets, public statements, paperwork that was put out by Donald Trump whilst he was in office. They're saying that was an official act, therefore he should enjoy immunity, therefore that conviction should be overturned. The judge has agreed to hear that argument, and sentencing has been postponed until the 18th of September. Good news for Trump. But in terms of Joe Biden, he's a man facing a deepening crisis within his Democratic Party. Real concern embedded, crystallized over the 5 days since that TV debate, that he simply isn't doing enough to confound the concerns about his fundamental well-being and ability to do the job. There are members of the party, donors among them, elected officials screaming at Joe Biden to come out, do interviews, put himself into the kind of setting where he can be tested and to prove that he has what it takes to do the job. He has stepped back from that. In the 5 days, we've seen structured TV events in front of teleprompters, but nothing that would indicate that he's not a man who's disengaged from the political necessity to get out and prove that he has the agility mentally to do the job. Something else we're seeing, Anna, is the kind of leaks from within Democratic ranks that we haven't seen before from inside the White House. The New York Times is reporting that in the past few months, White House staff have become concerned at lapses in their president, lapses that have become more frequent worrisome and more pronounced. We're also hearing that Hunter Biden, his son, in the past few days is sitting in on meetings between his father and senior aides. And that has shocked senior White House staff. We're told that the general view among them is, what the hell is happening?
A fascinating stage of the election campaign. James, in Washington, thank you. Now, the Russian ambassador to the UK has told Sky News that Europe needs oil and gas from Russia, and sanctions against his country have failed to achieve their aims. A Sky News investigation has revealed that loopholes in the restrictions allowed British companies legally to help keep Russian gas flowing and generate huge revenues for the Kremlin's war machine. Sky's economics editor Ed Conway has tonight's special report.
Miles out in the sea lanes, where the North Sea meets the English Channel, a lone ship on the horizon. The cargo it carries tells a murky tale, one which takes us from the Arctic Ocean north of Siberia to the shores of Europe and eventually to the front lines of the war in Ukraine.
We aim to reduce this dependency on Russian fossil fuels and to get rid of it.
To wean ourselves off dependence on Russian oil and gas.
But this is the story of what really happened after Europe promised to end its reliance on Russian gas. Because it turns out Europe isn't just helping Ukraine, but also helping fund Putin. I've come to Belgium, to the port of Zeebrugge, one of the biggest liquefied natural gas, LNG, terminals in Europe. On the hunt for the energy story no one wants to talk about. Because while the amount of gas coming in pipes from Russia is down, the amount of gas coming in on LNG tankers is up a lot.
See, we're getting closer now. That ship was in Siberia 7 days ago, and it's heading to Zeebrugge with its shipment of liquefied natural gas for the European market.
Britain has banned these shipments, but the UK is also a part of this for another reason.
You know the most striking thing of all? That ship is actually insured by a British company. In other words, it's thanks to British financiers that Vladimir Putin is able to keep sending Russian gas to Europe, earning billions of euros along the way for his war effort.
Down the coast in Dunkirk is another tanker I've been tracking, the Yakov Gakel. And it's a similar story. European money and British services facilitating the ongoing flow of Russian hydrocarbons.
This ship, it's got a Russian name, it's got Russian gas, but it's actually part-owned and operated by a British company.
Our investigation shows that while Britain has banned any ships with a Russian connection from docking on our shores, this country is still a critical cog in the wheel that helps keep them running. A wheel Europe can't afford to stop turning. It still needs Russian gas, and Russia knows it, says its ambassador to the UK.
Europe is dependent a lot in this world on gas, oil, and other natural products. This is pure business, I think. There's no politics. We did not sanction Europe for purchasing anything from us.
Seapeak, the company which runs that tanker, didn't respond to my calls, so I've come in person to see if I can persuade them to talk.
Hi, hello. Hi, my name's Ed Conway. I work for Sky News. Is anyone going to come down and talk to us? No? And even if we stay here all day and we're waiting...
I'll phone the police.
You'll phone the police?
And for the time being, that is more or less that. Europe keeps importing Russian gas in ships managed and insured by British companies, paying the Putin regime billions of euros in the process. Russia keeps bombing Ukraine with weapons paid for in part from the proceeds. Few find this very palatable, but since the alternative is to risk another energy price shock, there's little appetite to end this murky trade. Ed Conway, Sky News.
Revolutionary, that's what doctors have called a genetic test which could become widely available on the NHS for children diagnosed with cancer. Whole genome sequencing checks the entire DNA code of the tumour to identify each cancer-causing mutation. The information can help doctors make better decisions about which medicines will work. For the patients, like 9-year-old Eddie, it is life-changing. Sky's science and technology editor Tom Clark reports.
3.5 years ago, when he was 6, Eddie was diagnosed with an uncommon, aggressive form of leukemia. Blindsided by the diagnosis, his mum, like any parent, wanted to know anything that might improve his treatment.
You're sort of grasping at anything that will give you either reassurance or a better prognosis.
And in Eddie's case, there was something, the opportunity to have the entire genetic sequence of his cancer decoded.
When you see your child go through something like this, it's heartbreaking. And you just want anything to make it better. And tests like this, where it just gives them extra information, it's so important. And it's not a little bit of information, it's a lot.
The human genome contains 3 billion letters of DNA code. Having access to each of those genetic building blocks, including all those with mutations linked to cancer, can help improve treatment decisions, according to this new study, which included Eddie and 280 other children with cancer. NHS England already makes this whole genome sequencing available to any child with cancer or suspected cancer. But new and complex, its uptake hasn't been widespread. The researchers hope their findings change that.
Instead of doing a best guess for those patients, which is still really comprehensive treatment, it allowed us to really target the treatment so the patient got the right amount of treatment. So you're not over-treating them and all the toxicity that brings, but equally not under-treating patients and risking a relapse. So for us, this was really revolutionary.
In Eddie's case, the test revealed his brother Leo had no increased risk of leukemia himself and allowed his doctors to be confident that he'd respond well to standard treatment. And he did.
This course is run.
Last week, his treatment ended and his cancer is in remission.
It feels great to be normal again, like see my friends and like you ring the bell. Yeah, great.
What are you looking forward to doing?
See my friends.
Going on holiday.
His doctors hope testing like Eddie received won't just help others, but provide new insights into how errors in children's DNA causes cancer and perhaps point to new ways to stop it. Tom Clark, Sky News.
Violent protests have broken out on the streets of the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, again, but this time they're calling for the resignation of their president, William Ruto. A finance bill which he introduced and then withdrew contained controversial tax hikes, which sparked the initial violence. Well, the bill initially proposed to introduce a 16% sales tax on bread and 25% duty on cooking oil. There was also a planned tax increase on vehicle ownership. Although the government withdrew the legislation, some proposals remain, including higher import fees and tax on specialised hospitals. Well, the youth-led protest movement has grown rapidly from online condemnations of the tax hikes into mass rallies demanding a political overhaul, calling for Ruto's resignation. 2 weeks of clashes have left at least 39 dead, most of them shot by officers last week when protesters attempted to storm the Parliament building in Nairobi. The country's second city of Mombasa has also been at the centre of violence. Elsewhere, several people sustained gunshot wounds on Thursday at a TV station in Homa Bay. Our Africa correspondent, Yusra El-Bahir, reports now from Nairobi.
It's a rush to treat the injured, the ones who didn't make it out of the chaos unscathed. Unarmed protesters sustained gunshot wounds after they faced off against police in Kenya, and others choked on the plumes of tear gas.
Let's go.
It's a hard-fought battle here in the streets of the capital. And when they manage to gather, their message is clear. They want President William Ruto to resign.
We want jobs. We want money. We can't be doing this every single week because he wants to lie to us every single day. And killing innocent people and abducting them. This is nonsense.
These are now regular scenes in the streets of Nairobi. Riot police facing off against unarmed protesters who are challenging the state's power.
Even on the quieter streets, the police pluck people from the pavement. This truck has 7 arrested men inside.
I just want to understand, what does it take for you to arrest people? What makes you arrest people?
One officer tells us they just looked suspicious, and another says it's for protesting.
Stop and stop killing us!
The Kenyan constitution allows for peaceful demonstrations, but the Kenyan National Human Rights Commission says there have been over 600 arrests of protesters since the 18th of June. And over 32 cases of abduction. Prominent commentator Gabriel Guda has been arrested before, but says this time was different.
But this time, no one knew where I was. No one knew me in Kajiado, right? And it was at night. You know what? At night, anything can happen.
So do you think the government will be able to quell these protests?
If these kids continue for as long as it takes, I think it's the government that will back down.
The spirit of change has been ignited and the Kenyan flag raised. Whether or not Ruto resigns, history here has been made. Yusra Al-Bagir, Sky News, Nairobi.
The search on Tenerife for the missing teenager Jay Slater has been called off. His mother tonight saying words cannot describe the pain and agony that she's experiencing. In a statement issued this evening, Debbie Duncan confirmed the land search for her son had ended, but she thanked the Guardia Civil on the island, who she said had worked tirelessly in the mountains where Jay's last phone call was traced. 19-year-old Jay from Lancashire disappeared on June the 17th after setting off to walk to his accommodation on the island. More than 100 people are feared dead after a stampede at a religious event in northern India. Most who died were women and children, and more than 150 people were admitted to hospitals after the crush in a village in Uttar Pradesh. The stampede took place as attendees rushed to leave the event with a religious leader. The former DUP leader, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, is facing 7 more sex offence charges, bringing the total to 18. His wife, Eleanor, is also facing an additional charge. It follows a review of the case by the Public Prosecution Service in Northern Ireland. The pair are due in court tomorrow. Well, after days of waiting for an announcement, it was on day 2 of Wimbledon when Andy Murray finally announced he would not be competing in this year's singles tournament. It was always expected to be his last hurrah at his beloved grass courts, where he's won 2 singles titles. Sky's Amelia Harper has been to Wimbledon and has this report.
On a Wimbledon practice court, Andy Murray carries his kit bag, knowing now the rackets inside will never again be used in a singles championship here. The 2-time winner forced to pull out after back surgery. With 3 Grand Slams and 2 Olympic golds, the crowds wanted to see the former world #1.
A bit disappointed, I guess, but I was surprised he was playing in the first place. He's not really seemed to be in the best form, well, fitness recently. So.
Gutted, basically, but I can understand why. If he's not going to be much fit, then it's not worth him playing.
Just 10 days ago, Murray had surgery to remove a spinal cyst, but it's left the 37-year-old grimacing, the nerve pain in his right leg too great. This was going to be Andy Murray's final hurrah, his last farewell to the All-England club before retiring after the Paris Olympics. His hopes of singles success now off the cards, but he hopes instead to play with someone he knows very well indeed, for the first time ever. Training alongside his brother Jamie, they plan to compete in the men's doubles on Thursday.
He's not going to want to go flat on his back receiving treatment. He's not going to want to go having been thrashed in straight sets. What is the best way for Murray to go from this Wimbledon? I'll tell you what it is. It's by winning the men's doubles with his brother, with his entire family in attendance.
Someone who has made it to the singles game, though, Novak Djokovic, a knee brace supporting a torn meniscus repaired just 3 weeks ago. But heartbreak for reigning Wimbledon champion Marketa Vondrousova. Crashing out, she too had a hip injury scare less than a fortnight ago. Over 20 years, Andy Murray has created much emotion at Wimbledon. He won't lift this trophy again, but he aims to bow out with his brother at his side. Amelia Harper, Sky News, Wimbledon.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by the Conservative commentator, Tim Montgomery, and the journalist and broadcaster, Jenny Kleeman. Welcome to both of you. Certainly among the stories, we will be discussing this on the front page of the Mail. Its headline, Boris and Rishi unite to stop Starmageddon. Their front page there. Plenty more when we come back.